Welcome to Archmere Academy's 3 Career Questions series. This is going to be a video series in which we feature various professionals talking about their careers, what a day in their life might seem like, and how you as a student could learn more or better prepare for a career in this field. So we're really excited for today. It's our first video, and we're excited to welcome Brad Denning, a current and past Archmere parent. Brad, would you give us a little introduction to who you are, where you work, and what you do before we dive in?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for the intro and for having me as your first candidate for this series. I hope it's worthwhile. My name is Brad Denning. I am a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers in their advisory practice. I am a consultant that services the financial services industry. So essentially, I help financial services companies, mostly insurance companies, but also banks, wrestle with their technology and strategy issues, whether it pertains to growth, whether it pertains to technology, or just transforming their business. I've been in consulting since I got out of business school in 1998. Prior to that, I spent 5 years in banking before I made my career change. Really happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brad. And that's a perfect segue. Our first question is, can you give us a little bit of a better idea of what your educational and career history is that's brought you to this position in consulting?
Sure, happy to. So I'd go back to high school. As you know, we've spoken a bunch about this. I'm a big believer in trying to follow what you're interested in, what you're good at. And in high school, I was really good at languages. I took 4 years of Spanish, and I had the opportunity to take a Mandarin Chinese class, which in the early 80s in suburban Atlanta, Georgia, was a pretty unique experience. And I found out that I really, really enjoyed it. So when I started thinking about careers in college, I knew I wanted to do something with languages. I just wasn't sure what. So my college choices really focused on schools that had really strong language programs. And that's what led me to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. I was a Mandarin Chinese major and a business minor there. And in my sophomore year is when I really started thinking about what do I want to do when I grow up? And it's where I got, I think, my first real good piece of career advice, which was to really think about where you are and the people that you work with. And so I started using the Georgetown Alumni Network to start looking for opportunities anywhere in the mid-Atlantic that I could try things out. I knew that I like languages, so I was looking towards companies that had some semblance of an international program. And I wound up getting an internship with Wells Fargo Bank. And what I found in my internship is I explored the entire organization and really tried to focus on the opportunities that they would provide me, but also the type of people that work there, because I thought that was really important. I had a really great summer. They had a program where you could join after graduation and do a 2-year rotation within various areas of the bank to really understand the banking function, including their international function. So after my junior year of college and my junior year internship, I came back as a senior and said, I think this is what I wanted to try, because I felt like a cultural connection and the opportunity to do something international and leverage my major, which was Mandarin Chinese and banking, fit really well with Wells Fargo. So I started in a long time ago, and I did 4 different rotations through the bank. So 4 6-month rotations within Wells Fargo, everything from small regional lending at your retail branch to large corporate lending to cash management. And then my favorite rotation, which was at their international business division, where I got exposed and had the opportunity for the first time to take my language skills and the business skills, combine them together and work in that field. So I spent 4 years having a great time learning about international trade finance, managing all of the lending decisions and recommendations that were made for Southeast Asia. So this included countries like the Philippines and Australia, Indonesia, Australia, Taipei, Taiwan, mainland China, Hong Kong. Had the opportunity to live abroad, studied abroad. It was a fantastic experience. But after 4 years, I got to the point where I realized that while I enjoyed the language aspect and I enjoyed the people, the the intellectual curiosity, the desire to make a really big impact, it just wasn't there for me. And I didn't feel like I was being challenged a lot mentally. I just felt like it was a lot of repetition. So that led me to realize that, culture was important, but I needed a little bit more diversity in terms of my work experience and responsibilities. And in 1996, unlike today, there was really no easy way to just snap your fingers, learn about another industry, and then switch careers. So the best mechanism at that time was business school. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I had to get out of banking. It had become too repetitive, too much of the same thing over and over again. So I went back to get my MBA from the University of Chicago, and I did that for two reasons. One is I felt that while I had a minor in business, I didn't have the full tool set of all of the financial tools necessary to really understand the space. So that included everything from corporate finance to accounting to statistics to corporate development, entrepreneurship, you name it. And at the time, and now University of Chicago is one of the top schools to get a degree in that field from. One of the best things that happened to me in my first year is I took a lot of leadership classes where you were not only forced to look inward, but you had to ask your network of peers and friends about yourself. And after all of these tests came back, one of the tests had potential industries to investigate, because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that point. And the two industries that said, hey, based on your responses, you should look at, the first one was banking, and then the second one was consulting. So for me, it was pretty easy because I didn't want to do banking because I had done that. So I spent the next several months researching what consulting was and who were the players and what was the difference. And I'll get to that in a little bit and towards later in our conversation, the differences, but I decided that I wanted to try it. And so in between my first and second years of business school, because typically like college, in between your first and second years of your MBA is when you get an internship to really do a deep dive in an industry or a company that you're interested in working with. I landed an internship with a great firm based out of Chicago. And within 3 weeks, I knew at that point, literally, that I found where I wanted to be. I found a great team, great people, and more importantly, the types of responsibilities and things that I was asked to do on a daily basis was fantastic and really, really exciting to me. So I wound up joining that company after I graduated. I started low man on the totem pole and then worked my way up. I spent 5 years with a firm in Chicago called Diamond Technology Partners, doing all sorts of consulting in every sort of industry. And in short, what consulting is really about is helping organizations solve their problems that they're not equipped to solve themselves. So if you take Wells Fargo, for example, Wells Fargo knows pretty much everything there is to know about banking. But if you ask them to design a new technology strategy that gives them the tools to reach new customers in new and innovative ways, that's not what they're good at. And that's where consultants step in, bringing in expertise that can help them bring their knowledge of their industry with different fields and combine those to help chart and execute a path forward. And that's where I found that I hit my niche. I really, really enjoyed helping companies think through a variety of strategies and how to execute on those. I stayed at my original firm for about 5 years. I had 3 kids at the time, and I was traveling. One of the downsides of consulting is you travel a lot, and I had 3 little ones at home. So I actually took a step back and I joined Microsoft for 3 years, where I did consulting, but all local. So instead of traveling on an airplane, I was driving out to Allentown and Conshohocken and Coatesville to solve problems for Microsoft clients there. The kids got a little older. I never really got rid of that itch that I was doing at my first firm, and I wound up going back there back in 2008. We were purchased by PwC in 2010, and I've been a partner now for a little over 10 years, and my responsibilities are really threefold. It's manage the firm, develop people, and sell and bring in new work for our clients. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am right now. And the things that I really think are at the core of consulting are, if you find that you get bored very easily, or that you like the idea of exploring different industries, different problems, different types of work, and working with a large variety of people, consulting is something you might want to consider doing some research on. If, on the other hand, you're a person that is really structured and organized and likes to know 6 weeks from now, I really want to have a good feel for what I'm going to be doing, where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be asked to do, consulting might not be that exciting for you, because there is a lot of variability in our sector. Hopefully that helped.
Yes, that did. Absolutely. So we are recording this in April of 2020, right? So we are kind of right in the heart of the COVID-19 quarantine. So certainly for this next question, feel free to sort of answer pre-COVID-19 and currently at sort of what your experience is. But tell us a little bit about a typical day in your life. What, you've given us a little bit of a snapshot, and maybe there isn't a typical day, but give us an idea of what your life looks like as a consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think, in general, for the majority of firms, and this isn't universal, but it's fairly consistent. There's a lot of travel. In other words, consulting firms are organized so that the consultants travel to their clients and work hand in hand with their clients. So most of your career is spent traveling to and from your client site. So typically on a Monday, you're flying out to a client, returning home sometime later in the week. So as I was thinking about this question, I thought I'd show pre and post-COVID calendars to give you a sense of what a day in the life might be like. So what I'm first going to do is share my calendar from, I'm going to go back to January. I picked a good day, January 29th. So this is a Wednesday. So this is a typical week or day in the life of pre-COVID. So you can see here a nice and early 6:45 a.m. flight down to Atlanta, where I have a big client. So 2 hours in the air where I'm trying to catch up on work and get ready for the day. And you can see right out of the chute, I'm double booked. This is an internal call, so a lot of my job is spent on planes, but also trying to navigate the priorities of which meetings I can handle in person and away. This, of course, is my Avis number. This time is drive time. You can see here, I get to my client. We have a 2-hour session with one client, quickly doubled up with another customer experience focused meeting and another walkthrough here. So typical in consulting is this whole, how do I manage 3 things at the same time, and making priorities of what you go to, what you don't do, what you can't go to, and what you delegate to. You see here, yet another meeting that I had to decide, do I attend? This is an internal team sync at 5 p.m. Eastern time with my internal team, followed by another sync with a team that I have in lovely Iowa. And then this was a meeting that I had to touch base with my previous client at 6:45, and then it's sprint to the airport, make the 8 o'clock flight, get home at 10:15. So a day in the life for consultants is travel, and then serving your clients. For me personally, it's a lot of, again, selling work, which was these things, managing the firm, which is these, and then meeting with my clients, which is this. Now compare and contrast that to post-COVID, and we'll go to last week. What did I pick? April 8th. All of that travel time, as you can see, has been replaced by virtual. So as opposed to having conference calls, now run the business, catch up with my teams, making sure my teams are okay, doing some internal research, prepping for our annual review cycle, having a stand-up with one of my teams while simultaneously trying to meet with a couple of vendors. This is an internal call for all the leadership at my team to understand what's going on with COVID. Debrief, all hands call, staffing call, and then this was a happy hour that we're doing to try to connect all the disparate teams that used to see each other every week. Now we have to do it virtually. So while the work is the same, the dynamic has changed. So I'm still selling work. I'm still meeting with my clients. I'm still working with my people. Now it's a lot of this. 6 weeks ago, it was all in person or on the phone. So the video transformation is pretty big for us. But in consulting leadership, it's manage the firm, sell work, and manage your people.
Awesome. Great. So if you had a student that was interested in consulting, what are things they could do to learn about consulting or prepare for that, both inside and outside of the classroom?
Sure. Great question. I'll tackle the first question first, which is, what's the best way to research consulting? So the great news is there's so many different tools out there. Every single consulting firm, if you just do a quick web search, the top 8 will come up and you'll see them. We all do a pretty good job of describing what our company does and what consulting is. So the first place I would start is just doing some internet research on what is consulting, who are the top firms, and getting an understanding for each one of those firms. That's really helpful. The second thing you could do is something we talked about last week on another web conference, which was start leveraging your network. Archmere has a terrific network of graduates that you can tap into, working with career services, working with your parents, what have you. If you can find Archmere graduates or friends of your parents that are in the consulting space, that is the easiest way to learn about what it is a consultant does in a very, very friendly, easy to talk to manner. It's very casual, and you can really ask pointed questions. What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? What are the good parts? What are the bad parts? What coaching would you give? And so the combination of the internet research and then the networking research together will give you a pretty good sense, not only of what consultants do, but also of the different natures of each of the firms. I think that's more important when you're in college or a recent graduate and you're trying to learn about certain firms, is using the same techniques with the alumni within your college network to reach out to the young alumni within those firms to get a really good understanding of what do those people do and what do they like about their firm and what's the culture like. That's the easiest way to learn about consulting as an industry. If you start thinking about preparing for consulting, we solve puzzles all day. So any type of class that you can take that helps stretch your thinking and problem solving skills is great. I'd encourage you not to go as a student too single threaded in one particular discipline. So rather than go in college, for example, all finance or all accounting, in consulting, it's really important to think about stretching your brain and solving problems in different ways. So your liberal arts education is very good because whether it's history or econ or political science or languages or math, it forces your brain to solve problems and think in different ways. Also, there are, I'd say 25% of the consulting community is built up of engineers. Engineers in general solve problems. And so whether it's electrical, chemical, computer engineers, there is a 25 to 30% of the consulting community is built on engineering students and engineering graduates.
Awesome. A little tidbit for students too. One of the great features about LinkedIn is that you can actually search for a specific company and it will tell you what those people do, where they went to school, and what their majors were. So it's a really nice, interesting way, building off of what you said, Brad, to once you find those consulting firms, if you're interested, going and looking up that consulting firm on LinkedIn and being able to figure out what did these people major in, where are they located. There's some really interesting information once you've identified those companies. So my one bonus question for you, Brad, is the best career advice you've ever gotten or that you think is important for a student to think about? Put you on the spot there.
No, great question. I think back to my first project after I got out of business school. So at the University of Chicago, I was a finance and strategic management major. At the time, it was the #1 business school for finance in the country. And so I came out of the University of Chicago thinking I was a financial genius. And I got on my first project and we were developing a new business concept for a company based out of Minnesota. And the partner in charge put me in charge of developing the marketing strategy for this new entity. And I remember going to him and saying, hey, I'm not a marketing person, I'm a finance person. And he said something that I think answered your question, which is, that's great, but until you have the mindset where you're learning every single day and picking up new skills, new abilities, new capabilities, if you don't do that, you become stagnant. And if you become stagnant, you're not really worthwhile to me. And I sat back and said, wow, it was a stomach punch, because I thought I was going to be finance and consulting, but that has served me extremely well over the past 22 years, because I've reinvented myself professionally probably 7 times, because the world changes so fast. If you're not agile and flexible and willing to learn new things and try new things, you're not going to last long in this day and age.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Brad, for your time and your expertise. We always appreciate it. And hopefully this conversation gives students interested in the greater field of business in terms of consulting, or just still trying to figure out what they want to do. It gives them some tidbits and some things to know. So we greatly appreciate your time.
Always my pleasure. Thanks so much.